Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's BDF44 coming at you with another video. So, I gotta admit, honest to God, I haven't loved the last couple videos I made. A little more inaccurate than I'd like to be in terms of basketball, stuff like that. Misspeaking a little more than I'd like to, that kind of thing. So I just want to sharpen up, let you guys know I want to sharpen up. I'm going to try to smoke less weed. Simple as that. It really gets down to a situation where you're sitting there watching the games, you're just puffing away, and you look up and you're a little too high to be making these videos, but you want to talk anyway. It's one of those type of situations. So I'm not like Snoop. I'm not like those guys. I'm gonna have a low tolerance for what it is I'm messing with. So I'm gonna try to bring a more cohesive version of myself to y'all and talk this basketball stuff, so I can be more proud of what it is I'm doing, and you guys can get better quality. But ultimately, I want to say that I thank everybody for checking me out, and we got a lot to talk about today, because right now I'm looking at a few things that are very interesting to me. First of all, Tyler Hero, balling. The Miami Heat are a different team if he's breaking out like this. I don't love the fact that they don't have a true power forward out there, although they do have some guys that are playing that position at a high level for what it is that they're trying to do. And I think through the regular season, as a strategy, it can work, but ultimately they're going to need to address some size, because although Bam is an all-world center, he's about the only real center they got outside of Dwayne Dedman, who I think is an average player who can really help you, but it's not enough in terms of size to when I'm trying to go up against teams like Orlando, Cleveland with Stilts, teams like Philly who have Joel Embiid, other teams that you're going to see with a lot of centers, a lot of size that happen to be out there. I think teams like Miami, teams like Chicago, teams like Phoenix, who are running that style, would be wise to assure that they have someone in place that can snap them out of that style and stay cohesive. One of my very favorite words. So that's something I'm looking at very, very closely. I like what I'm seeing out of Miami, though. They are better than I predicted they would be this soon. And I heard somebody say something in regards to their team that I really agree with. They play like they're mad that you would dare enter their building. That was a very good way of putting the way that the Miami Heat have started the season. It's like they come out with a certain level of anger pointed at their opponents, and you can see it in the personalities of the players that they have. They got, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. Those guys are serious about bringing the energy as well as the effort, and it translates to the rest of the team. I think of a guy like Eric Spoelstra, who has a fiery nature about himself, though more subtle in some ways. You can tell he's a fighter. You can tell that he's not the type of guy that's going to back down from any fist fight of any kind. I just get the feeling that they are taking on Pat Riley's personality as well. Obviously, we know how Pat gets down. We know what he's about. He's going to bring out the wolves, and he's going to have them attacking. So as far as I'm concerned, the Miami Heat are a team you must take seriously in the Eastern Conference, even though they're in the midst of so much going on around that conference. At the end of the day, I think Miami is starting to earn my trust as a franchise this season. They just got to figure out that power forward position if they want to run me over all the way, but they're definitely playing great. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Another thing, I'm just going to hop around randomly. I don't have anything written down. I don't have anything in mind. So this is a complete freestyle as usual. But another thing, staying in Florida. It's too early to get frustrated with Jalen Suggs. I think Jalen Suggs is one of the most complete rookies in this class in terms of having both defense and three-level ability as well as facilitating ability. So when you talk about players that literally have everything, including a sweet three-point shot that they don't have to tweak, Jalen Suggs is that guy. I do believe Jalen Suggs is the guy who's probably going to struggle the most of the top-tier players in this draft because of his circumstances. He's playing with a guy who I think is one of the most underrated young players in all of basketball right now, Cole Anthony. And he's also playing with a guy who hasn't come back yet, in Markelle Fultz. So when Markelle gets back, that rotation is going to be even more dynamic. You're obviously dealing with more than just those two, because you got R.J. Hampton in place as well, who should definitely be getting minutes somewhere, a lot of minutes as a matter of fact. So I just look at that Orlando team and say they have a fantastically young backcourt, like the Sacramento Kings, like some of these other squads that we see, Cleveland, etc., Houston. And they also have stilts like Cleveland. And what I mean by stilts is two centers that start, two essential 7-footers, even three that start. And you're seeing that theme a lot in the Eastern Conference as well. Milwaukee has that. Detroit has that. Toronto has that. and a few others as well. It's not coming to mind. Well, Milwaukee, the champs, obviously have a very big lineup as well. So I think Julius Randle, you got to start considering the New York Knicks when you're considering size. When you talk about how healthy Mitchell Robinson is, that's another thing that we want to talk about. I'll segue from Orlando into New York now. I love what I'm seeing out of them. My concern about the Knicks was always about Mitchell Robinson's health. I was of the mindset that he wasn't going to be back. He's back. He's playing like a better version of himself in the process of being back. And as I've mentioned in regards to Evan Fournier, he's shooting lights out. Although he's cooled off for the last couple games a little bit, that piece is essential, especially since they lost Reggie Bullock to Dallas. I think that they're in a position right now where they can do a lot of damage in the Eastern Conference. They're getting out to a good start. Julius Randle picked right up where he left off. He will definitely be another one of those all-star guys this year. He's definitely going to be there. And I just love the dynamic of Kemba Walker and Derrick Rose. I really do. I think it's a similar dynamic to what the Lakers have in DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard in terms of position, to where you have two vets who, in theory, should be past their star level stages, but if you put them together, you got a star level center, a star level point guard. With the Lakers, it's like DeAndre Jordan. We don't quite have that center that would help us at that level, but if you put the experience and the accomplishments of DeAndre Jordan and DJ together, suddenly you have a hell of a center right now. So it's kind of that kind of dynamic. It's like 2-in-1 type of thing, or 1-in-2. I don't know, but you get what I'm trying to say. I just love the idea that they can play off one another, come in for one another, do some of the same things. Their offense never takes a step back. And if something goes wrong where both of those guys can't play, guess what you got? You got Emmanuel quickly stepping off the bench ready to give you 17 points. I love what they got, man. I can't lie to you. RJ Barrett, I think RJ Barrett's playing fine. The problem, and I'm not watching the Knicks closely, so please take this with a grain of salt, but I think the problem that they run into is just usage as far as other guys are taking shots away from RJ Barrett, and that's why his numbers are kind of low. But he's still scoring up to par. He's just not getting the other peripheral stats that you would love to see to make him fantasy relevant, in my opinion. So I have dropped him in a bunch of leagues for now, even with the intention of seeing him raise his value over time as the roster continues to shake out over time. But for now, I'm not mad at him at all. He's doing exactly what they want him to do as far as I can tell. It's just that the other guys are taking shots from him. That's it. And that's not a bad thing. That gives him more open looks, more quality looks, I think, which is a good thing for a young player. Obi Toppin's production and progression has been fantastic. He has exceeded my expectations, made me look like a fool to a degree, I guess, because I still think they should have taken Tyrese Halliburton, but he provides size. And because he's not that great of a defensive player, he fits in so well in terms of the type of fit you would want him to have, surrounded by defensive players like Robinson and obviously Nerlens Noel. And then, of course, not having him as that primary power forward right now because Julius is in front of him. It's just he's nestled very perfectly in a situation where he not only fits and has the complementary pieces around him, but also can flourish in the role and still shine within that role. So the New York Knicks coaching staff, they have to be given a whole lot of credit for how they've managed that particular player. They just did a phenomenal job. I think that's one of the best situations in all of basketball right now. I really do. Obi Toppin's just in a sweet spot. Okay, so I'm going to move on from the Knicks, just kind of skip around. Paul George looks great in the Clipper uniform, as usual, scoring the ball, picking up where he left off last year. He had 40-something last night in a loss. And I think that's going to be the theme for the Clippers, man. I just don't love the idea of their circumstances. Not that they can have any control over them or is there anything they can do right now. I don't believe it is. They just got to kind of run out there with what they have till Kawhi gets back. And I don't think Kawhi's coming back anytime soon, if ever, because I'm on that train. But, it's one of those situations where even so, you can clearly see a situation where Paul George can make an MVP candidate year out of this thing. Just scoring like the wind and doing the things that he does so very, very, very good. And I think the Clippers are going to do better than they're supposed to do because they have such a phenomenal coach in place in Ty Lue, who knows how to make adjustments to get the most out of the roster. As I've mentioned, I saw in the preseason that they had found something in allowing Hartenstein to start and facilitate I looked at his assist numbers and they weren't in the regular season. That game that I saw him doing all the assist stuff was actually in the preseason. So I was kind of confused. I'm like, did I get that wrong? No, I didn't. He can facilitate. They just haven't experimented with it in the regular season. They gotta go back to that. I think it works. Maybe not all game long, but a good 3-4 plays can get you 3-4 assists out of that guy, and that's the type of ball movement you ultimately need. They have got to use different methods to try to get ball movement out of their team because they don't have that facilitator. So I think he can help with that, and I know as much as I like Zubac is not helpful in that way. Zubac is a player who needs someone to set him up. So we've talked about this a lot. That's how I feel about the Clippers. But ultimately, Paul George is about to have a phenomenal year, and Terrence Mann is going to step out and break out, I think. So that's important. Also, Eric Bledsoe's playing well, too. It needs to be said because, obviously, Eric Bledsoe's gotten a bad rap for a lot of some of the situations he's been in, just how he's performed. But he's starting off his Clipper tenure, his second Clipper tenure, on a very high note. And for what it is that their team needs, that's right on time. So I like what I'm seeing out of him, and I just think Clippers are doing the best they can, you know. Obviously, I'm not a fan, so as a fan, I speak and I'm laughing and doing all that. But as an analyst, I'm saying, you know, they're doing a pretty good job of what they have. You're dealing with Kawhi Leonard, and his injury. And when you're dealing with Kawhi Leonard and his injury, you just have to assume he's never coming back. Simple as that. You know, I've learned that certain players, and then we talk about those players on this channel a lot, they're going to go by the beat of their own drum. They could care less about what makes sense to you or what looks like tea leaves telling you or none of that. They're going to do what makes sense to them, and that's just what it is. And Kawhi's one of those guys, man. Kawhi's one of those guys. If that thing don't heal right, expect him to continue sitting into next season. You know what I mean? He don't play about that kind of stuff. So you just understand that, Clipper fans. Understand that very closely. A lot of y'all are expecting him to come back and save y'all season. I'm saying it's wise to not. If he comes back, that's money in the bank, but you had better be preparing for a season without him. All right, let's keep it going. Nicola Joseph came back fast from that knee bumping situation. I thought they would be more cautious with him and let him sit last night, but he went out there and balled out. It's a lot. It's some stuff going on right now with guys playing through injury, and I don't think it's necessary. I think with all that the NBA has going on with COVID protocol, with all that guys have to deal with in regards to a very long 82-game season, especially star players like Jokic and Zach LaVine, I just think it would be wise early in the season to not play with things that could be reoccurring. Knick-knack injuries, tears, knees, and stuff like that. It's too early in the season to be trying to play through all that. You know, some of those injuries are going to be reoccurring injuries because they keep getting bumped. I think the Zach LaVine one is even worse. It's like, yo, you can't even play defense properly, fam. You know what I mean? You can't even be a full service to your team because you're trying to guard against that damn hand. It would be best if you just sit a game or two and let that thing heal a little bit without it keep getting swiped at, without you keep having to get hit at, without you having to bang on iron with it. It's just not the way to go. I grew up on Kobe. I know what happens when you play on a hand that does not heal properly. It affects your shot forever depending on the type of injury you have. You do not play with your hands if you're a basketball player. I think you should heal that up. I think you should be patient with that. I know they just lost Pat Will for the season with a dislocated wrist, so they're a little undermanned, but they have the depth, especially at wing. He does not need to be risking further injury on that thumb tear. So that's something I stand by. I just think this is the wrong decision. And it ain't like you got to sit out for a month. Just give it a couple of nights rest, bro. The point is you don't want it while it's healing to keep getting hit. And when a guy sees some of these savvy defensive players, when they see your hand is wrapped up, bro, they going after that hand. They know you got a shoulder, they bumping that shoulder. They know that rib messed up, they going up against that rib. They know your knees messed up, they putting you in a blender trying to make it so that you hit the floor. They are not going to just say, oh, Zach's doing, let's ease up on. No, they're going after that hand. And then it becomes a liability for the whole team. And I just, after watching basketball for so long, I just know better. And I know that Zach has never been on a good team in his entire career. So he's very, very adamant about showing that he's still the star of this team and showing that he's still somebody they can count on. And that will lead you into making mistakes that ultimately hurt you long term if you're allowing it to be something like this, in my opinion. So if that hand gets re-injured, we will definitely be talking about it because no is what I'm saying. Don't do this. You should sit that out. Even if you already played the last game, sit the next one. I'm telling you, once it gets hit. Anyway, all right. Brooklyn Nets. James Harden found his mojo, and I think all it was what everybody's been saying. He has to adjust to not getting those calls. He usually, and I said this about Russell Westbrook as well in a couple games ago, driving to the basket with the intention of getting contact, not driving to the basket with the intention of finishing. Finish your chippies. Shaq put that in my head. I don't give a damn if they whistle it or not. Your intention should be getting 2 points. And if they whistle it, a bonus. If you're going with the intention of drawing the foul and you're not even thinking about attempting a shot, you haven't done your job. And I see players doing this so much. And I'm so glad the NBA has done something about it, because flailing your arms, some of these plays aren't even offensive attempts. They're just literally flopping to draw fouls, and that's their only concern. That's literally all they're trying to do. The NBA has done a fantastic job of eliminating that BS, and James Harden has had to adjust as much as most, I think. Chris Paul's had to adjust a lot, I think. Trae Young, we know Trae Young had to make some adjustments, etc. Those are guys that really do take advantage of that, and I'm tired of it. I think the NBA's tired of it, and that's why we've seen a change. So I'm very happy about that. But in the meantime, James Harden was able to get to the line yesterday in his normal, the way that he likes to. And that's where he gets the bulk of his production. But he's going to run into a lot of resistance in that way. They're just not going to call those calls. And we're better for it, James. I'm not going to lie to you, man. I want to see you attempt shots. I don't want to see you flail your arms. That don't look good. It's definitely fantastic strategy. But so is calling timeouts every 3 minutes if you use them properly. I mean, not really. But what I'm saying is you can slow the game down and do a lot of stuff that doesn't look good for strategy. And at the end of the day, something like that, it was fine while it lasted. You took advantage of it. Great, you mastered it. But it was time for the NBA to react to it because it didn't look very good. And it slowed games a lot. Houston Rockets games would be 5 hours long because this guy's shooting free throws every 3 minutes. It was frustrating. So I'm glad that is kind of over with. But the Brooklyn Nets are going to find their way. Like I told you guys, I made a whole video about this. He's a scientist, bro. If he took advantage of a rule that nobody else can figure out, guess what he's going to do? He's going to figure out what they've just adjusted and take advantage of that too. So people who have a tendency for manipulating their way through loopholes don't genuinely stay in a snag for too long. James Harden will get his way out of that, and he'll be back up to his normal numbers. If not his normal numbers, he'll do something extraordinary in response to not being able to get to the line as much. I think his three-point shooting will probably go up or something of that nature, but he's going to have to work on his conditioning, and I think he's on his way. He's doing that. KD looks great, as usual. KD's best scorer, not named Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, what do you want me to say? I don't know if there's a pure scorer ever in existence. Now, granted, Kobe Bryant, volume, 81-point game, KD can't do that. So I always think about Kobe Bryant when I think about the great scorers in this league. But KD don't have to work half as hard as Kobe did. Not half as hard. The game, scoring the ball and putting buckets in the basket comes much easier to KD than just about anybody else ever. And he's still able to display that even coming off of a catastrophic injury that kept him out for a couple years or a year or whatever. So I would like to see the Brooklyn Nets try to bulk up their front court a little bit. I think they're a little long in the tooth there, even though they're getting some good stuff out of Blake Griffin and Millsap and those guys. Claxton is going to be very good defensively. He's still growing. I think he's going to be a fantastic young defensive player. But I'd like to see them bolster that front court. I wish they would have held on to Alizé Johnson. I really do. But they made their decision in regards to him, and they also brought in a guy I like a lot, of course, in Devontae Kaycock, who was with us and won a championship. So I know what he can do. I hope he gets that opportunity there. But overall, they're relying a little too much on them guys that are a little bit older to kind of hold it down. And I just think that teams who do that are probably going to pay night in and night out, including my Lakers. We're going to pay. You can't rely on old guys in the regular season. You have to give that to the young guys. So Brooklyn will understand that, and I'm pretty sure they'll limit those older guys as the season progresses. All right, what else are we talking about, man? There's so much to go off by. Oh, yeah, struggling stars, since we're talking about that. James Harden, struggling. Obviously, Dame Lillard's struggles have been talked about greatly. And there's a few other stars around the league that have just gotten off to slow starts as well. Uncharacteristically shooting poorly, that kind of thing. I really don't know what that's about. Dame Lillard's situation is, I don't know, you can speculate all day long, but I think it's just something he's going to have to shoot his way through. I know that's the thing. It's hard to say. You just don't know nothing, honestly. But speculation is necessary in some cases since we're trying to keep a channel going. I think maybe Dame might have found himself with a different type of offseason. being that he just dropped an album. He usually drops an album in the offseason, to be honest with you. The album's good. All his albums are really good. But it's one of those situations where it's like, I just wonder if he was able to really condition himself in the way that he normally does. Because, as we start to grow older, some of the things that we used to be able to get away with in terms of our conditioning, as you start creeping up in your 30s, you have to do more to stay in that shape. And I think Dame may be starting to go through that process. I'm not saying that it's necessarily showing up like Father Time shows up on the court, but what I'm saying is maybe he went with his normal workout regimen and maybe his body ain't react to it the same way, because usually what you're seeing is guys who are starting off slow, their conditioning is not where it needs to be, And I look at a guy like Dame and I say, I'm not questioning whether or not he's working out. I think he's working out and I think he dedicates himself to his craft, but he's creeping up in that age where it takes longer to heal from injury and it takes longer to build muscle and it takes longer to, it takes more to stay in shape. And I just think that that's kind of what my hypothesis is about that. I haven't seen if his shots are short, so I can't tell you if his legs, I don't know if he's dealing with some type of injury that would ultimately throw off his mechanics, because that's probably something along the lines of what's taking place there. Or maybe you lift too much weight, that can throw you off as well. So it's a lot of different things. I could lead to a guy having a short-term slump, but that's all this is, a short-term slump. Anybody that actually thinks Dame is going to continue to shoot at those percentages, 17% from the three, you haven't been paying attention. This is one of the more pure scorers in the world, who gets buckets in his sleep, and he wins championships at the buzzer. Or not championships, but series at the buzzer. Maybe championships one day if he gets an opportunity. So I don't question whether or not he'll snap out of this. I question how he found himself in that, I guess. So just question it. It's nothing serious. In the meantime, Portland's playing pretty well. Like I said, they're taking on the identity of Chauncey Billups. I like that. They need to continue to have that ferociousness about them. I think it'll carry them far. And the top heaviness of how they're structured with CJ and Dame being such fantastic stars, they can overachieve quite a bit if those guys continue to find their way. Obviously, Dame is struggling, but CJ is not. CJ is playing some of the best basketball he's played in a very long time. He's healthy, and he's shooting the ball at an extremely high clip, comfortably, finding all of his spots, getting what he needs done out there. I like the addition of Larry Nance on this team. I like the addition of Tyler Zeller. Both of those guys have been very good for them. I haven't seen Ben McLemore, but I like the addition of what he can do for them. Nasir Little is starting to finally show signs of life, which I think is a direct testament to them changing the coaching situation. Anthony Simons, same thing. Those guys, the others, are finally starting to show that they can play, and that's something that they just weren't getting a chance to do with Terry Stotts. I'm sorry, he just did nothing for those guys. Now Chauncey's actually putting in some coaching, putting those guys in positions to shine, and that's exactly what Portland needs. So that's what I got for Portland, man. Let's see, man. There's so many teams doing so many things. Chris Duarte, you want to talk about the NBA rookie rankings? Chris Duarte is so consistent, man. That's the thing about that dude in Indiana. He's not doing the extraordinary stuff. He's just being a very, very solid shooting guard that gives you the same thing every night. And that is something that I'm finding that the Pacers find a lot. Consistency. Players that can do those things every single night. And that backcourt is so strong. When they get Caris LeVert back, you look out for those Pacers are going to play very well. Domantas Sabonis, underrated center in this league, probably an early MVP candidate as well, even though he's not going to get the consideration based on name. You look at the numbers, you look at how the team's doing, I think he should be at least in the top 10 right now. He's balling. He is balling, and he doesn't get enough credit as a facilitator. We're going to talk about that too. Domantas Sabonis gets guys the ball. We talk about centers who facilitate and do different things, that Draymond, Ben Simmons, all these different guys, Jokic, all these guys who don't play point guard but do facilitate. Domantas Sabonis is one of the better ones out there. We never, ever talk about him. I never talk about him in that regard, but he needs to be mentioned in that regard. He gets his assists, and he makes others better consistently. So, yeah, that was very important. I've been thinking about that a lot. He don't get mentioned enough. It's a real star in this league, and, yeah, we want to give him some credit. I think Charlotte is one of the most intriguing teams in the league right now because they have such incredible ebbs and flows, such incredible highs and lows, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Getting blown out by like 60 in the preseason and then going out and beating teams they have no business beating, and then coming out the next night and struggling. It's such wide inconsistency amongst their team right now from player to player. Kelly Oubre played great one game, and and not so much. I think consistency is obviously coming out of Miles Bridges, who is at all-star level right now. If the all-star game were to start today, he should be on the team. It's cut and dry. I don't even have to question that. He's one of the most solidified all-stars in the NBA right now, in my mind. And he's known for his inconsistency, but it hasn't been showing up this season. PJ Washington has been a guy who's kind of had his usage brought down, I think, like RJ Barrett. But he's also not playing very well. But I give PJ a pass. He's had a hell of an offseason. Personally, we know what's going on there. So I just kind of give him a pass. He's going to have to find his way, and most importantly, he's going to have to fend off new talent at his position that he hasn't had to deal with before. Kai Jones, guys like that. Mason Plumlee starting the season off hot, taking minutes from him as well. So they just have a different dynamic on that team now, and he's going to adjust to that. Terry Rozier isn't back yet, so that's a very big piece as well. And they're not using James Bouknight in rotation. I don't know if he's hurt or not, but I definitely understand that he's way better than that. So he should be playing, and he should be playing consistently. And I think any circumstance that doesn't have him getting some minutes right now is not utilizing what it is he can do. I love what they're getting out of other guys. The point guard position, of course, LaMelo Ball is the star, but not using James Bouknight early is a mistake. He's instant scoring, he's instant athleticism, and he's got a lot of heart. Does he have some issues in terms of moving the ball and having feel for the game early on? Yes, and it's the coach's job to help him early on work all that out so it doesn't continue to be a problem. You got to put the ball in his hands. You got to let him shine. So I want to see. I know they have a hell of a thing going on with their guards now, but in my mind, it is extremely, extremely important that Bouknight break some of those early selfish habits right away. And he's only going to do that by playing. So, yeah, that's what I think there. LaMelo Ball struggled here and there. He's also been great. Don't worry about it. He'll snap out of that. He'll be one of the best players in the league for a very long time. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. There was something else. Talking about rookies, of course, we get back to Evan Mobley. He's going to win Rookie of the Year if it ain't Scottie Barnes. It's down to those guys for me right now. But it's still early, and it's a lot of game left, and we haven't seen a single game played out of Cade Cunningham, who hopefully will be playing tonight, or whenever the next game for Detroit is. I think they play tonight. But, yeah, man, that's another thing. I've said this before. I'll say it again. You haven't seen Detroit at all. You haven't seen Detroit at all. If you want to know what's going on with Detroit, consider what the old Sixers look like without Allen Iverson. That's what's going on there. Think about what Dallas looks like without Luka Doncic. That's what's going on there. They just don't have the main piece that everything is supposed to revolve around. The guy that makes everything tick on that team has literally never played for it. So it's one of those situations where their dynamic is so unique to whatever you think you're seeing, ignore it. They literally haven't even played their first game yet. When Cade Cunningham gets down there, then you're going to see all those pieces in place. The Oleniks, the Stewarts, the Grants, the Bays, all of those guys are going to start falling into their actual roles, what they're going to actually be looking like. And I think they're going to play even better because Cade's going to create so much opportunities with his ability to draw attention away from others. You got to respect every aspect of his game. Everything, including his long arms and length, you have to respect. So once he gets on the court, you're going to see open shots for guys like Saddiq Bey. You're going to see open shots for some of these other guys on this team, Oleniks, because, quite frankly, everybody's going to be paying attention to Cade Cunningham. So he'll be fine, I think. He's what we believe he is. We just haven't seen him yet. That's something. So Scottie Barnes playing amazing. Precious Achiuwa, all that they got going on in Toronto, I'm feeling they're overachieving. Nick Nurse may be the best coach in basketball, and he's showing it yet again. Getting Scottie Barnes in here looking like a freaking all-star out the gate. This dude is phenomenal. I made a video about Scottie Barnes when I first discovered him before the draft, a couple days before the draft, and I was so excited because of all the different things he could do defensively. Homie can shoot too. I wasn't excited enough. This boy can shoot too. He's a facilitator. He's a rebounder. He's a big body. He specializes in defense, and most importantly, athleticism and shooting ability is there. Scottie don't have no weaknesses. None. There are no weaknesses. What is it? Ball handling? What are we talking about? Mid-range shooting? What is his weakness? Dude does everything. And he does it at a very high level. He's going to make many, many all-star teams. He's going to make Many teams sad having to deal with him every night. And I'm so very excited about Toronto Raptors' future with this guy leading the way. And yes, he will be leading the way. I'm sorry, Fred. I'm sorry, Pascal. I'm sorry, everybody. Scottie is the heart and soul of the Toronto Raptors. He's the face of the Toronto Raptors, and that is just what it's going to be. That's established in my mind. It's just not close at all. So when you consider what their future is with that huge lineup with those guys, him and Precious are practically the same size with polar opposite skill sets. One's more offensive, the other one's, in theory, more defensive, even though, as I said, Scottie does everything. They're going to grow together. Miami messed up by letting Precious leave. That team is going to be good. I don't know how good, but when we're talking about big lineups, they have a massive lineup, and they have defensive players and scorers in different positions. They can upset a New York. They could upset a Chicago. They can upset somebody. I'm telling you. They may. So I'm looking at the Eastern Conference. I'm telling you, man, that bottom half of them teams at the bottom, you could see upsets all over the place. I don't want to play Cleveland. I don't want to play Orlando. I don't want to play Indiana. I don't want to play New York. I don't want to play Boston. I don't want to play Washington. That's another thing. The Washington Wizards, y'all, listen to me. I don't think the Washington Wizards are going to sustain this, but the type of start that they're getting out to is super impressive. Kyle Kuzma's doing what I thought he was going to do. Crash the boards. And I wish I would have said that on this channel. I didn't. But I think that's where Kuzma can really improve. His shooting percentages, they're going to vary because he's not as consistent as he needs to be. His facilitating stuff, he has a facilitating gift for passing the ball, but he hasn't tapped into it yet. I know it's there because I've seen it in flashes, but he hasn't tapped into it yet. His three-point shot, as I said, comes and goes. But what doesn't have to come and go, and one of the things that he was starting to really establish with the Lakers, was a rebounding prowess. An ability to crash the glass and get to the boards on a consistent basis. If he can keep his rebounds above 7 a game, I think everything else will fall into place. But he has to hang his hat on something because he doesn't get enough peripheral stats and he isn't a consistent enough scorer to be as relevant of a player as he believes himself to be. But if he continues to crash the boards, everything else will fall into place. Attempt to get 7 boards a game. That's my challenge for Kyle Kuzma. You get 7 boards a game, and I think everything will fall into place. Spencer Dinwiddie has healed. He stepped back into his old star level playing self, and now you have to deal with a high level point guard next to Bradley Beal, and nobody was counting on that. Nobody was counting on that. We were expecting Spencer Dinwiddie to come back a half mass, maybe be himself later on in the season, not come out firing like this. So I'm so very excited. They're still not healthy. That team is not healthy. Montrezl Harrell's playing like Clippers Trez, exactly who I believed him to be. Never thought he wasn't this. He could have did this for the Lakers. We just didn't use him properly. No part of Trez's value should be diminished in any way from that Laker tenure. He's still that guy, and I'm glad he's able to show that. Thomas Bryant's coming back. It's going to be a bit of a logjam when that happens, but I love the energy. As I've mentioned, those bigs, him, Gafford, those guys going to rotate just fine. Reminds me of the dynamic the Lakers used to have with Juju, Larry Nance, and who was that third guy? Kyle Kuzma. That rotation of 3 forwards is kind of like the rotation they have right now. I love that dynamic. Shooters everywhere. Corey Kispert's going to be out there hitting shots. You know what I mean? So I like the spacing that they put on the floor. Denny Advija is going to help with the facilitating in situations where they don't have a necessarily natural facilitator. And even though, we've been talking about starts, he's been struggling. We got to mention Bradley Beal. Even though he's struggling, the team around him isn't. So once he starts being himself, the team's going to be even better. And mind you, Rui Hachimura is still out. So, look, the Washington Wizards, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs because I'm wondering if everybody's going to be healthy at the same time. That's my concern about the Washington Wizards. Can everybody be healthy at the same time for a long period of time so they can have a good regular season? That's to be determined. But if they can find that health, they have a much better team than they're supposed to have, period. And that's why the Eastern Conference is stronger than it's ever been, because you look at a team all the way at the bottom like the Washington Wizards, and you realize they can upset somebody. They really can. So I look at a Boston team, I'm like, as good as they are, I look at Philadelphia and Boston are the 2 teams I look at it, and I say, it's not a foregone conclusion that you're making the playoffs. It's not a foregone conclusion you make the playoffs because of these other teams and these other dynamics that they have with these long, young players and all this stuff. You're going to run into Toronto's, you're going to run into Orlando's, you're going to run into Cleveland, and you're going to have problems. Everybody, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, all of them are going to deal with those 3 teams, particularly as teams that are going to have to be taken seriously at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. And that dynamic scares me if I'm at the top of the Eastern Conference, because those teams in the East aren't really good enough. They're not dominant enough to withstand continuous upset nights from these teams that are not going to let them rest in the fourth quarter, that are not going to let them sit their starters. You understand what I'm saying to you? They're going to put them in positions to have to work hard and play hard to get wins against them. That's a dynamic they didn't have to deal with in the past in the Eastern Conference. No teams had to deal with that in the Eastern Conference because they know they're going to play Charlotte. They know they're going to play Orlando. They know they're going to play Cleveland. Those games ain't easy no more. You can't go into those buildings and expect to win. You can't go in those buildings and sit KD and expect to get a W. It's not going to happen. And that is going to make the Eastern Conference squeeze. So a lot of these teams that we like, Miami, Orlando, New York, listen, they're going to get their butts kicked by that schedule. The East is tough. So that's what I wanted to make people understand. This is not the whole Eastern Conference. This is the strongest Eastern Conference of my lifetime this season. So, yeah, now that that's been said, what else? There's so much to say because it's a long season ahead, and there's so many different narratives. Ben Simmons still on the sideline, but he's in the facility every day, from what I understand. So I got on here a couple days ago and said I think he should get back to playing ball because they're not going to be able to trade him, period. And you just don't want to let something that you helped build go down the toilet because of your absence. That's just not something you want to attach to your name for any reason. And that's exactly what's happening with Philadelphia 76ers. In a tough Eastern Conference, he needs to come back or they're going to suck. They're going to suck lottery style. I'm telling you. Philadelphia could literally have like the 8th pick in the draft while we thinking they're going to be a foregone conclusion to win. No. I actually have them out of the playoffs right now if this continues. They're not going to make it. In fact, I'm going to say something that ain't going to sit well with a lot of y'all. Because I know I come off as a Philly hater if you've been watching these videos. But I'm almost expecting them to miss the playoffs at this point. It has very little to do with them and more to do with the field. It's already been said. You know what it is. They're going to run into those young teams. They're going to get beat. Joel Embiid's going to go for 50, but he's going to get a loss. And it's going to happen a lot. And that's what I'm expecting to happen. Until they get a facilitator, until Ben gets out there. Now, if Ben gets out there, we adjust all of this. Ben gets out there, they rise back up to the top of the Eastern Conference. Eventually, I expect him to be in the top 6. If Ben comes back, top 6. Even a disgruntled Ben will help them a lot. So I just think we're at a point where, hey, man, I don't know, call me weak, but they won. They won because of circumstance, not necessarily because you weren't strong enough to beat them. It's because they hold all the cards with the trades. At the end of the day, all they have to do is just keep saying no. No, and deal with the consequences. And who gets the worst of it is the Philadelphia fans, Joel Embiid, who's trying to lead this team to a championship, and of course Ben Simmons, who continues to not play basketball. So at the end of the day, yeah, as much as I hate to admit it, I think the Philadelphia organization is just in the catbird seat, and they don't think that Ben Simmons is in a position to take a stranglehold of his own future until he raises his trade value. That's just the dynamic of the game he's in. So I don't like it. He doesn't like it. I don't think most people who are rooting for him like it, but it's time to get back on the court if you're Ben Simmons. It's just for strategy purposes, it's time to do it, period. Because Philadelphia organization ain't going to do right by you until you do. So, yeah, man, I'm happy talking basketball for this long. There's so much to say. I still got plenty to say, but I think I'll cut the video here just to spare you guys of any more of my voice. So, thank you all for watching. My name is BDF44. I appreciate you greatly. Peace.